In the quiet village of Nneorie, women were told never to sit on the bare floor. The rule was as old as the land itself. They said the ground beneath carried memories of blood and sorrow, and that it recognized the weight of women differently. No one questioned it. Mothers passed the warning to their daughters, and even the foolish obeyed. No woman dared test the soul's patience. It was not just fear, it was faith, shaped by stories too dark to forget. Among the villagers was Adaku, a widow whose life had become a map of silence. Her husband had died during planting season, and grief wrapped around her like a second skin. She had obeyed every rule, every tradition, yet peace never visited her house. Her crops withered early, and her child, Ifoma, fell ill without cause. When the elders told her to make sacrifices, she did, but nothing changed. She began to wonder if her suffering had already been chosen for her. One evening, as the sun bent low, Adaku sat outside her hut, watching smoke drift from distant fires. Her knees trembled from exhaustion. She had spent the day fetching water from a distant stream after her only clay pot broke. The air felt heavy. That night, like a warning whispered by unseen mouths, the women nearby sat on stools, gossiping about market troubles. But Adaku felt too weak to fetch hers. The stool lay broken inside, and she decided, just for a moment, to rest on the bare floor. Her body touched the cool earth. It felt gentle at first, like a mother's palm on a fevered child. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The air shifted. The evening insects fell silent. Then, beneath her skin, she felt something move, soft, crawling, almost alive. Startled, she rose quickly, brushing her wrapper. Nothing was there, but the earth seemed to pulse faintly beneath her. The other women stared in quiet horror. Adaku, one gasped. You sat on the floor? Adaku nodded slowly, confused by their terror. Within moments, an old woman, Mama Owuma, approached with trembling steps. Her eyes were wide, her hands shaking as she clutched her staff. No woman must sit on the earth after dusk, she whispered. The ground remembers the dead. It listens for sorrow. You have called it. Adaku tried to laugh, but the sound died in her throat. That night, when she returned home, her small lantern flickered violently, and the wind outside howled through the cracks of her hut like a voice she could almost understand. Sleep refused to come. Adaku lay awake, feeling something cold brush her ankles. Each time she reached down, there was nothing. Ifoma coughed softly beside her, then went still. Panic rose in her chest, but her daughter's breathing resumed. Still, Adaku could not shake the sense that something unseen had entered with her. The floor beneath her mat seemed to whisper, a low hum that only she could hear. She pressed her hands against her ears, yet the sound lived inside her bones. By morning, she looked pale and hollow-eyed. When she stepped outside, children ran away, pointing and shouting that her shadow moved before she did. She looked down, and indeed, her shadow trembled strangely, like it had its own heartbeat. The elders gathered quickly. The earth has marked her, they said. A cleansing must be done before it spreads. They fetched white chalk, palm wine, and a goat. Adaku knelt in the square, too weak to protest, as they tied the goat beside her. The ritual was long and loud. Songs were sung, drums beating, smoke poured over her head. But as the final chant ended, the goat collapsed, suddenly, and died. A thick silence fell. The priest stared at Adaku with wide, fearful eyes. It is too late, he whispered. The ground has accepted her. Adaku felt dizzy. She tried to stand, but her legs failed. She looked down and saw fine cracks forming on her bare feet, like dry earth before rain. Days passed. Wherever Adaku walked, the soil cracked beneath her. Crops she touched withered. Water fetched from her pot tasted of clay. People began to avoid her hut. Mothers pulled their daughters away when she approached. Only Ifeoma stayed close, too young to understand what was happening. Mama, she whispered one night, why does the floor make noise when you walk? Adaku smiled weakly, stroking her child's hair. It's nothing, my love, she said. But deep inside, she feared she was becoming part of something ancient. One night, rain began to fall. Adaku went outside, desperate to feel it wash away the whispers. The ground, soft and wet, beckoned. She fell to her knees and pressed her palms against it. A strange warmth spread through her body, and for a fleeting moment she felt peace. Then the soil beneath her hands pulsed again, stronger this time. Faces appeared briefly in the puddles, weeping. She screamed, stumbling back. The rain turned red, muddy and thick, carrying the scent of old blood. By morning, the elders sent for her. You have angered the spirits of the earth, they said. You must leave this village before the curse spreads. Adaku begged to stay, for Ifoma's sake, but their decision was final. With heavy heart, she packed her few belongings and carried her child away. The villagers watched in silence as she disappeared down the red path. Behind her, the air grew lighter. Some said they saw the soil close itself when she had stepped. Adaku and Ifoma wandered for days through forest and plains. They found shelter in an abandoned hut near a river. She tried to rebuild her life, fetching water, planting small yams, but nothing grew. The ground refused her touch. At night, Ifoma coughed even harder. Maybe we should return home, the child whispered. Adaku shook her head. Home no longer wants us, she said. She looked outside at the full moon. The earth shimmered faintly, as if watching her, patient and cruel. One dawn, she woke to find Ifoma gone. The small mat lay empty. Panic seized her. She searched the riverbank, calling her name until her voice broke. Then she saw tiny footprints leading towards the forest. She followed, heart pounding. The path ended at a clearing where the soil looked freshly disturbed. In the center, Ifoma sat quietly on the bare floor, smiling. Mama, she said, it's warm here. Adaku froze, horror flooding her. Stand up, she cried, but the girl did not move. Before Adaku could reach her, the earth opened slightly beneath Ifoma. A faint glow emerged, golden and red, like dying embers. Mama, the girl whispered, they are calling me. Adaku screamed, leaping forward. She grabbed her daughter's arms, but the ground felt alive, pulling, tightening, claiming. With desperate strength, Adaku yanked her free, but the effort tore her wrapper and bruised her arms. The soil closed again, leaving behind a faint hum that echoed through the trees like a lullaby from below. Adaku carried Ifoma back to the hut. The child shivered violently, whispering strange words in her sleep. Adaku stayed awake all night, praying to every god she knew. By morning, Ifoma's lips were pale, and her eyes refused to open. Adaku screamed until her throat burned. She held her child close, rocking back and forth. Then, faintly, the floor beneath them began to tremble. The hut wall creaked as dust fell from the roof. A deep voice, low and endless, filled the air. Return what you took, the voice said. Terrified, Adaku ran outside carrying her child's limp body. The voice followed, echoing from the soil itself. Return what you took, it said again. Adaku fell to her knees, crying. She's my only child, she pleaded. Take me instead. The earth seemed to pause, as if listening. Then the ground softened beneath her feet, warm and heavy. Ifoma stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open for a brief second. Mama, she whispered. Adaku smiled through tears. I'm here, my love. Then the ground split open between them both. The villagers of Nneorie heard a thunderous sound that morning, though the skies were clear. Those who ventured towards the forest found a large hollow in the ground, round and smooth, as if something had been lifted out of the world. They whispered her name, afraid to speak too loudly. The priest declared it the judgment of the earth. She broke the boundary twice, he said. No mortal may touch what sleeps beneath. From that day, no one fetched water from that side of the forest again. Years passed. The story of Adaku became a warning told to every girl at birth. Mothers would whisper, never sit on the bare floor, child. The ground listens. Her name became both a curse and caution. Yet sometimes, during quiet evenings, when the wind moved strangely, villagers swore they heard a woman's voice singing softly under the soil, a lullaby filled with sorrow and love. They said she sang to calm her daughter in the dark place below. One evening, a new family built a hut near the forbidden forest edge. They were travelers who didn't know the tale. The woman, Chioma, laughed when the villagers warned her. How can sitting on the ground anger anyone? She said. She often sat outside her hut, humming as she pounded yam or washed clothes. Her husband told her to stop, but she only smiled. Traditions change, she replied. But one night, as she sat to tie her wrapper, she felt the ground hum faintly beneath her. She rose quickly, uneasy, but dismissed the feeling. The next day, her baby fell ill with a strange fever. No herbs worked, no prayers eased the child's cry. Then one night, Choma dreamt of a woman standing ankle deep in soil, holding a sleeping girl. The woman's face was cracked like dry earth, and her eyes shone with tears. Tell them, she whispered. Tell them we never meant to be forgotten. Choma woke trembling, her baby silent beside her, breathing faintly as dawn approached. She ran to the priest's hut and described her dream. He listened, his face grave. The earth still remembers, he said. The woman in your dream is Adaku. Chioma's hands shook, but she asked me to tell them something. The priest nodded slowly. The punishment was born from pain. Long ago, the earth took what was never buried. His eyes darkened. This tradition began because of death unspoken. He then told her a story the elders never shared beyond closed doors. Centuries ago, during a great drought, the men of Nneorie buried their dead wives and daughters secretly in shallow ground. There was no time or space for proper rites. The soil, restless and grieving, began to hum with sorrow. Crops died, rivers turned bitter. The priest begged the gods for help, and an oracle declared, the earth must no longer feel the weight of women, lest it remembers its pain. From then on, no woman was allowed to sit on bare ground again. Chioma listened, horrified. So the punishment was never about sin, she whispered. It was about remembrance. The priest nodded sadly, but the rule became fear, and fear became tradition. Chioma wept quietly. Adaku tried to rest on the ground, and the earth remembered. The priest said nothing. He only looked towards the forest and still does. That night, Chioma sat outside her hut once more, her heart heavy with pity for the woman lost to history. She looked at the moonlit soil and whispered, "I'm not afraid." Then she sat down, slowly, deliberately, on the bare earth. The air turned cold. A low hum rose from the ground. Shadows shifted like ripples in water. She closed her eyes and whispered, "If you can hear me, I remember you." At first there was silence. Then faintly she felt warmth beneath her palms. The air shimmered, and for an instant she saw Adaku, her cracked skin glowing faintly, her arms wrapped around a small child. "You shouldn't be here," Adaku said softly. "They won't understand." Chioma's tears fell freely. "Someone has to tell the truth," she whispered. Adaku smiled, a sorrowful smile that belonged to the ghosts. "Then tell them," she said, fading slowly into the earth. "Tell them we only wanted to rest." Chioma woke at dawn with soil on her hands and the faint echo of a lullaby in her ears. Her baby's fever was gone. She walked to the square and told the elders everything. They listened, pale and shaking. Some believed her, others called it madness. The priest said quietly, "The earth has spoken through her. We must end the silence." That day he gathered the villagers and declared the old rule broken. Ground must no longer be feared, he said, but understood. Women began to sit cautiously on the ground again. Nothing happened at first. Then the rains returned, gentle and clean. Crops grew fuller, streams ran clear. Hope returned to Nneorie. Yet, every now and then, when someone mentioned Adaku, the air would grow still, as if listening. Chioma often sat by the forest edge, her baby on her lap, humming the tune she had heard in her dream. She never forgot the woman who suffered for peace to return. One afternoon, years later, a group of children playing near the forest found a small clay pot half buried in the soil. Inside lay two wooden cabins, a woman and a child, bound together with red thread. The carvings were old, but their eyes looked freshly painted, almost alive. The children ran to show Chioma. When she touched the carvings, warmth spread through her fingers. She smiled faintly. "She's still watching," she murmured. She placed the pot back into the earth and whispered a prayer for rest. But peace never lasted long in Nneorie. As generations passed, new leaders rose and new fear were found in new forms. Some began to say that Chioma's act had angered the ancestors, that the earth would demand another offering. Slowly, whispers spread again. Old traditions once buried returned with new names. The ground once free began to hum faintly at night. The people grew restless. An old priest dreamt of Adaku again. She stood at the edge of a cracked plain holding a small flame. "They forget," she said. "They always forget." When he awoke, sweat covered his body. He gathered the elders and warned them, but they only laughed. "The earth is calm," they said. "Your dreams are old." Yet, that very night, the river dried without reason, and the ground split open near the same forest path where Adaku had vanished. Panic spread, crops failed, and livestock fled. The people cried out to the gods. The priest, desperate, called for Chioma, now an old woman. "You were the last she spoke to," he said. "What must we do?" Chioma looked at the trembling ground and whispered, "The earth doesn't want offerings. It wants truth." She gathered the villagers and told them again the story of Adaku, of pain, love, and memory. "If we bury our wrongs," she said, "they will always rise again." That night, she led a ceremony unlike any before. The women of Nneorie, old and young, sat together on the bare earth, hand in hand. They sang softly, songs of mothers, daughters, and those forgotten. The ground trembled gently beneath them, not in anger, but in recognition. Then the humming ceased. The air felt clean again. The priest wept openly. She is free, he said, at last. After that night, no strange things happened again. The land healed, but deep under the soil, something still moved. Slow, patient, eternal. Some said Adaku's spirit had become part of the land itself, watching, ensuring no tradition born of pain would return. Others said she walked the fields at night, unseen, blessing every seed planted by a woman's hand. As years turned into decades, her story became legend. Mothers still told it, not with fear, but reverence. Remember Adaku, they would whisper. She broke the silence so we could rest. Children listened, wide-eyed, the old fear replaced by awe. The floor was no longer forbidden, but sacred, a reminder of endurance and love. One day, long after Chioma's death, a traveler passing through Nneorie sat to rest under a tree. The villagers gasped as he lowered himself onto the ground. Do you not fear the earth? One asked. He smiled faintly. Fear? He said. I only feel warmth. When he stood up, he found his palms coated in fine dust that shimmered like gold. No one could explain it, but the villagers bowed in silence. That night, the wind carried a familiar song across the fields, a woman's voice, soft and sorrowful. Those who listened said it wasn't haunting but comforting, like the earth itself humming in gratitude. Old priests said it was Adaku's spirit, finally, singing not from pain but peace. In time, Nneorie prospered. Its soil became the most fertile in the region. Women led rituals not from fear but honor. The ground that once punished them now bore their strength. Yet, deep beneath it all, a whisper lingered, a reminder that every tradition has a heart, and if forgotten, it turns to shadows. Travelers who passed through would sometimes hear tales of the woman who sat where no woman should, and how her courage changed everything. They always left in silence, glancing back at the red earth as if it might open and speak. Some claimed that if you pressed your ear to the ground at night, you could hear her still, her voice singing with love. One night, when the moon hung low and silver, a young woman named Ikiru wandered to the forest edge. She had grown up hearing Adaku's story but wanted to know if it was true. She sat quietly under the earth, whispering, "Thank you." The soil was cool beneath her, calm and gentle. A soft hum rose, faint but warm, like a heartbeat. Then she heard a woman's voice, calm, steady, filled with sorrow and pride. Say we remember. Nkiru wept softly, understanding she was sitting on the love that once suffered. When she returned to the village, dawn was breaking. The air felt lighter, almost blessed. The elders asked what she saw, but she only smiled and said, "The earth is at peace." That day, for the first time in generations, every woman sat on the ground during the morning prayer. No curse came, only warmth beneath their palms, as though the wind moved quietly through Nneorie. Some swore they heard a woman's laughter in it, tender and free. Adaku's name was no longer spoken with fear, but with love. Thank you so much for watching. If you got to this point, please give this video a thumbs up. It will help grow my small YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, do well to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you get notified when I post more interesting content like this. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on these stories. If you haven't gone through my channel yet, do well to go through my channel. I have more interesting stories like this. Please like, share, and leave a comment. See you guys in my next video. Bye.